When talking about Greek mythology, Heracles, or more commonly known as Hercules, is probably one of the top 3 names that come up in people's minds. Made famous through numerous media representations, Hercules is often depicted as a brave, invulnerable hero with superhuman strength, all of which are qualities that ancient Greek people revere and worship in a hero. His real story, though, might come as a surprise. Hercules was born to Amphitryon, a great general of Thebes, and his wife, Alcmena, but he wasn't really the son of Amphitryon, he was the son of Zeus. One night, while Amphitryon was fighting on the battlefield, Zeus shapeshifted into Amphitryon and seduced Alcmena. Through Alcmena, Zeus sired Hercules. Alcmena gave birth to Hercules for Zeus and Iphicles for Amphitryon. The goddess Hera, Zeus's royal wife, was furious as always at her husband's infidelity. So one night, when Hercules and Iphicles were still babies, she sent 2 great snakes to kill them both. It was at this moment that Hercules demonstrated his godly might. Alcmena heard Iphicles scream and immediately went to check on them both. What she found was a little baby Hercules strangling the 2 great snakes and playing with their limp bodies while his brother Iphicles was crying loudly. Because of what everyone witnessed then, they knew that Hercules was destined for great things. Hercules was hard to educate though. Well, hard is putting it mildly. He didn't like studying music and art and often threw a tantrum during these studies. That alone would have been fine, but seeing as he has superhuman strength, he once smashed a lute at his teacher and killed him. That was the first time Hercules had killed someone by accident. He didn't mean it and was very, very sorry, but that didn't stop his fatal tantrums from happening in the future either. In areas of studies that he liked such as fencing and sports though, Hercules never threw a tantrum and the teachers were safe and sound. By the time Hercules was 18 years old, he was strong enough to single-handedly defeat a great lion called the Thespian lion, the skin of which he used as a cloak. Hercules was very confident in his power and unflinching in his actions. His next great deed was defeating the Minyans, a tribe of people who had been demanding tributes from the Thebans for quite some time. The citizens were very grateful for this and offered their princess, Megaera's hand in marriage. Hercules happily accepted, and together they had 3 children. Hera's fury was never quenched though, as Hercules was a living reminder of Zeus's infidelity. Her hatred for Hercules was never quenched until death came for him. Displeased with Hercules' newfound happiness, Hera turned him mad when he was in his house with his family. Now Hercules was known to have a nasty temper, and was merciless to people who crossed him, but he would never harm his own family. That day, Hercules' madness drove him to slaughter his entire family. When he regained his sanity, Hercules only saw the bodies of his wife and children, and blood all over. Seeing his sanity return, his father told him of his madness and said it wasn't his fault. But Hercules was the hardest person on himself. For every temper tantrum and misfortune he inflicted upon others, he would ask for forgiveness and to be punished accordingly. When no one would hold him accountable, he would punish himself as severely as he deems appropriate. For no one can punish Hercules unless he lets them. Out of deep, deep guilt, Hercules wanted to leave the realm of the living. But one person pulled him back from the brink. That person was Theseus, leader of Athens. Theseus convinced Hercules that to die from this was not heroic, but cowardly, and to live and atone is the right way forward. Theseus' act of stretching his hands out to Hercules made Theseus an accomplice to the evil that Hercules had committed, but Theseus didn't care. Hercules was moved by this and agreed to come with Theseus to Athens. After a short while of spending his time in Athens with Theseus, Hercules was still burdened with enormous guilt, so he consulted the oracle at Delphi on what to do to atone for his sins. The priestess there said that as he had defiled himself by committing such evil, a heavy penance was required of him. She told him to go to King Eurystheus, ruler of Mycenae, and do whatever the king demanded of him. With the will to purify himself, Hercules went with what the priestess advised willingly. King Eurystheus was no slouch. He knew the tasks had to be daunting for the purpose of absolving Hercules. He devised 12 nigh impossible tasks to complete for Hercules, famously known as the 12 labors of Hercules. Unfortunately for Hercules, the king had Hera's help in deciding what these labors would be. The first labor was to hunt the Nemean lion, a beast that was impervious to weapons. But Hercules didn't need any weapons now, did he? With his bare hands, he strangled the Nemean lion to death and succeeded in finishing the first labor. The second labor was to kill the 9-headed Hydra in Lerna. This was a difficult one, seeing as one of the heads was immortal, and if he cut off the other heads, 2 would grow in its place. Fortunately, Hercules was helped by his cousin Iolaus, who gave him a burning blade to cauterize each chopped Hydra head. When Hercules finished cutting off all the heads, he buried the immortal one under big boulders. Third labor was to bring back alive the Ceryneian hind, a female deer with golden antlers, which was sacred to the goddess Artemis. The difficult part was he had to bring it back alive. It took him 1 whole year to finish this task. The fourth labor was to capture a giant boar in Mount Erymanthus. Hercules simply chased it until it was exhausted from running and captured it. The fifth labor was to clean the Augean stables in a day. The stables were used to house thousands of livestock and hadn't been cleaned for years. It was an impossible task, but Hercules does the impossible for breakfast every day, and this time was no different. He diverted the flow of 2 rivers towards the stables and flooded it at once, cleaning out everything in the stables. The sixth labor was to vanquish the flock of Stymphalian birds that had been plaguing Stymphalus. Hercules was helped by Athena in this quest. She provided him with golden clappers called the Crotala, which he used to scare the birds into flight. He then shot them down while they were in flight. The seventh labor was to fetch the Cretan bull Poseidon had given to King Minos, the one he had kept instead and later sired the Minotaur. Hercules successfully subdued it and brought it back on a ship. The eighth labor was to bring back the man-eating mares of King Diomedes. Hercules went and killed King Diomedes first, rendering the mares without their master and much easier to bring back. The ninth labor was to bring back the belt of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. Hercules went to Themyscira, land of the Amazons, by ship and met Hippolyta, who said she would willingly give him the belt. But Hera stirred up the Amazons and made them think Hercules was there to kidnap Hippolyta, prompting them to charge down on his ship. Seeing this, Hercules quickly took the belt and escaped with his ship. A version of the story says that Hercules preemptively slew Hippolyta when he saw the Amazon warriors charging. Other versions of the story had Hercules kidnap Hippolyta with Theseus and took her back to Athens on their ship. Whichever version we choose to follow, Hercules undoubtedly succeeded in his ninth labor. The 10th labor had Hercules bring back the oxen of Geryon, a monster with 3 heads and 3 sets of legs who lived near the end of the world at Erythia. When Hercules finished the trip there, he placed 2 massive great rocks to commemorate his journey. Hercules defeated the Cattle's bodyguards, Orthos and Eurytion, and also their master Geryon, and brought back the oxen on his ship. The 11th labor was the most difficult one yet. Hercules was tasked to bring back the golden apple of the Hesperides, children of Atlas the Titan. Hercules didn't know where to find the Hesperides, but he knew of Atlas's location, so he went to Atlas. The Titan Atlas was tasked with holding the wind of the skies by Zeus after the Titans lost the war. Hercules asked Atlas of the Hesperides' whereabouts, and Atlas saw a chance to be rid of his punishment. Atlas said he'll go and fetch the golden apples from the Hesperides if Hercules agreed to take the weight of the skies in his stead while he was away. Remember how Hercules had full confidence in his strength? Yeah, Hercules agreed to do it with no second thought. When Atlas returned with the golden apples, he told Hercules that he'd go in Hercules' stead to Eurystheus to give him the apples himself, while Hercules can continue to hold up the sky. Even though Hercules wasn't that bright, Atlas was even less so. Hercules agreed to Atlas's plan and asked him to hold the sky for a bit so Hercules could put some pads on his shoulder to lessen the pain. Atlas foolishly agreed, and when the sky was transferred back onto Atlas, Hercules took the apples and left Atlas. The final labor was for Hercules to bring back Cerberus, the 3-headed guard dog of the underworld. Hercules went to the underworld and instead found Theseus with his friend Pirithous sitting on the chairs of forgetfulness. If you've watched our video on Theseus, you'll remember this is where Theseus was trapped in a chair, trying to help his friend whisk away Persephone from Hades. After freeing Theseus, Hercules met with Hades and told him of his quest. Hades agreed to let Hercules take Cerberus, provided he can defeat it using no weapons. While proving to be a difficult task, Hercules managed to subdue the Cerberus and carry it back to King Eurystheus, finally completing all his 12 labors. There are many stories that have the name Hercules included in it. like the time he fought the river god for the hands of Princess Deianira and won, taking her as his second wife. Or when he freed the daughter of King Laomedon in Troy from her Andromeda-like situation where she was going to be sacrificed to one of Poseidon's beasts. Hercules managed to defeat the beast and free Laomedon's daughter, but the foolish king denied Hercules the prize he promised, prompting Hercules to kill the king and take the prize he asked for in the first place. Even after finishing the 12 labors, Hercules still had many adventures, one of which had him face off against a giant, Antaeus. Antaeus had a habit of demanding random travelers to wrestle him and killing them if they lost. What's so petty about this is that Antaeus was a good wrestler and that he was invincible as long as his feet touched the ground. So, Hercules lifted him up and strangled him in the air, suffocating the arrogant giant. Though Hercules completed numerous heroic deeds, he had done almost as many misdeeds. With each misdeed, he received a punishment, either by the party involved or from himself if no one wanted to punish him. One such punishment came from Zeus after Hercules killed a friend for an insult the friend's father, a king by the name of Eurytus, hurled at Hercules. Hercules had to be a slave to Queen Omphale for a year, during which he was degraded and humiliated by ways of having to dress up like girls and doing things ladies would usually do, such as weaving. Now, if there was one story that could paint a complete picture of Hercules, it would have to be the one during his 8th labor, when he was on his way to King Diomedes. Hercules had planned to spend the night in a friend's estate, King Admetus of Thessaly to be exact. The story of King Admetus goes like this. When Zeus wanted to punish Apollo for killing the Cyclopes, he sent Apollo to work 1 whole year for mortals. The house chosen for this was the house of Admetus. During his punishment, Apollo grew close to Admetus and his wife Alcestis. When Apollo saw the 3 Fates about to cut Admetus' thread of life, he begged them not to and asked for a way to delay his passing. The 3 Fates said that if Admetus found someone willing to die in his place, his life would continue on. Apollo passed this on to Admetus, and Admetus started asking everyone he was close with. To his surprise, none of the people close to him would offer their life up for his, not his friends, and not even his old parents. After spending a whole day going around and asking the people closest to him, Admetus resigned to his house in defeat. His loving wife Alcestis saw his grim demeanor and found out about this. She happily gave her life for his. All she asked of him was a beautiful funeral. When Hercules got to Admetus' estate, he could see that Admetus was wearing garments for grieving and asked if somebody close to him had died. Admetus was in the middle of holding the funeral he promised his wife. But out of consideration, he said that it was a funeral for a stranger in his household, since he didn't want Hercules to feel sad. So he sent Hercules to another estate far from the funeral noises and had his servants tend to Hercules there. Hercules ate and drank so much he got drunk and became rowdy. Problem was, all the servants and workers were still grieving for their mistress, and seeing Hercules singing and shouting left a sour taste. Hercules demanded to know why their faces were very bitter. One of the servants finally relented and said it was their queen's death. Hercules' heart sank. He had thought they were a bit weird for grieving so much for a mere household member. Feeling guilty that he had been inconsiderate of his friend's sadness, Hercules wanted to make things right. Hercules quickly sobered up and decided to confront death and bring back Alcestis to the land of the living. He had no plan. His plan was to wrestle death into submission and have them return to the underworld without taking Alcestis' soul. So Hercules went to the graveyard and made his demands to death. When Admetus showed up to greet Hercules properly after the funeral, Hercules was already waiting for him with Alcestis by his side. He had been successful in wrestling death to submission. This story tells us a lot about Hercules' character. He was so confident in his strength that he was sure he could beat death and retrieve his friend's wife back. He was also oblivious, as he often was, to his friend's situation, and he always wanted to make things right, no matter how hard or impossible it was. The only thing that will make this story more Hercules is if he beat one of the servants to death by accident. Now, remember that time when Hercules had to be a slave for a year? After finishing his sentence, he immediately gathered an army and killed King Eurytus, the one who insulted him and made him serve as a slave. Hercules had sent back prisoners of war, a group of maidens, back to his house, to Deianira. One of them was a very beautiful maiden, the king's daughter. When Deianira received these maidens at her house, one of the couriers ignorantly said that Hercules had fallen in love with the beautiful one, prompting Deianira to use a charm she had gotten from a centaur. It was a charm she was told to use if ever the time came when Hercules would fall in love with another woman. The charm was the blood of the centaur, which she doused over a beautiful robe and had the courier send back to Hercules. Hercules, who had no idea of all this, thought it was a great gift and worried immediately. The centaur blood burned his whole body, subjecting Hercules to excruciating pain, but death couldn't take him. He defeated it once. So Hercules made it through the pain and lived, but Deianira didn't know of the charm's effects. She thought it would make Hercules fall madly back in love with her, so she committed suicide out of her deep guilt for hurting Hercules. When Hercules got home and found out about Deianira's death, his heart sank. This time, he's had enough. He wanted to rest. Hercules told his subordinates to set up a pyre at Mount Etna to burn himself. When he got there, he laid down on the pyre and asked his youthful follower Philoctetes to burn the pyre. On Mount Etna, Hercules finally embraced the coming of death, as the fire burned his mortal vessel to ashes. Zeus and the other gods adored the hero Hercules so much that they lifted his spirit into heaven as his body burnt away. Hercules was welcomed up there by Zeus and the gods. Even Hera accepted Hercules, albeit not happily. But Hercules finally found his rest and peace in heaven. He even patched things up with Hera and was married to Hebe, the goddess of youth in Olympus and daughter of Zeus and Hera. One could say that after all the tragedy and misfortune Hercules went through, or put himself in, he finally had his peace and happy ending. But would the Hercules we know really just sit on his thumbs doing nothing in Olympus? I'll leave that to your imagination.